The radio does not stop. 3 frequencies in my left ear, 2 in my right, and a phone that rings when the radios fail. I am the ground evacuation dispatcher at Kabul's International Airport in August of 2021. I park aircraft, I open and close gates on the ramp, I stitch the flow from perimeter to buses, to stairs to seats. I live by minutes. I work with incomplete information. I change the plan before the old plan reaches the people who need it. You will not last a day here, not because you are weak, but because the system punishes certainty. The faster you decide, the more new problems you create. Every solution moves the bottleneck. Clear the holding pad, and the gate chokes. Accelerate boarding, and the manifest breaks. Speed the refuel, and the tow tractor goes missing. Water, cash, and a working handset matter as much as nerve. You cannot buy time with courage. Here is the scale. 19,000 people moved in 24 hours at the peak, roughly 90 flights, on a field cut in half between military and civilian concrete. That is not a headline. That is line after line on a whiteboard, erased and rewritten as wheels lift off. The paradox is simple. The faster the ramp turns, the more dangerous the perimeter becomes, because every rumor of an open gate pulls thousands toward a single checkpoint, and the next hour arrives with less control than the last. The environment is not a backdrop. It is a constraint. Kabul sits at roughly 1,800 meters above sea level. August pushes daytime highs toward 33 degrees Celsius. People dehydrate in the queue. Crews overheat on metal stairs. Generators stutter. Radios fade. Cellular networks wobble. When the phones die, we step to satellite handsets and lose precious seconds on each call. Those seconds are lives when the bus convoy idles in the wrong lane and a loadmaster is calling for final numbers. The rules shift by the hour. Lists of names change mid-route. Gate control flips between units. A call from the perimeter cancels a flow that looked solid 5 minutes ago. The airport is the last corridor out after the fall of the city on August 15th. By August 26th, an explosion at Abbey Gate kills 13 United States service members and around 170 Afghan civilians. From that moment, every meter between the crowd and the aircraft becomes a risk calculation. We repeat all night, every night, with less margin and more fear pressing from outside the wire. My job is not dramatic. It is arithmetic under pressure. How many seats? How many buses? How many minutes of fuel margin before a diversion? Which aircraft can power its own air conditioning on the ground and which needs external power that we do not have? Which stair truck reaches a high-door wide body and which only fits a narrow body that is no longer coming? I keep a tally of tow bars, cones, and chocks like they are gold. I trade a spare headset to a driver who can find me an extra tug. I split a 2-liter bottle of water among 3 marshals and tell myself we will find more at the next pallet. You expect clean inputs, stable calendars, an app that syncs the plan. You will not get that. You will get a manifest with 3 spellings for the same family name. You will get 2 buses that cannot push through a crowd without an escort you do not control. You will get a commander on the radio who needs an answer now, and a medic who needs 10 more minutes for a patient who will not survive another move. You will decide, and your decision will spawn new radio calls you cannot monitor all at once. Value, for you, is clarity. I will give you clarity. I will show you how this operation actually runs, the metrics that matter, the gear that breaks, the cues that form where no one expects them, the trade-offs that ruin sleep, and the exact moments when modern expectations fail. If you think endurance is about bravery, you will be wrong by the second hour. Endurance here is about fluids, manifests, tow capacity, and timing under lethal uncertainty. Keep the ramp moving and the perimeter strains. Slow the ramp, and the runway wastes the only resource that never grows back: minutes of open airspace. This is one day in a place where decisions compound. No safety net, no second attempt when the window closes. Watch closely. By the end, you will understand why most people would not last a day in this chair and why every good decision still leaves someone waiting in the heat. Reality map. We are at Hamid Karzai International Airport, Kabul, in August 2021. The field sits at roughly 1,800 meters above sea level. Daytime highs hover near 33 degrees Celsius. Heat stress is a planning factor for crews, evacuees, and equipment. The airport is a joint airfield with military and civilian aprons and a handful of usable stands under constant reshuffle. Access to the airfield runs through named gates. Abbey Gate, East Gate, and North Gate carried most of the civilian intake during the airlift. On August 25th, East and North Gate closed permanently due to threat streams, which concentrated the flow on Abbey Gate. The external approach to Abbey Gate ran past the Baron Hotel area, used as a processing node by British forces. That corridor shaped crowd behavior and timing at the gate. After the blast on August 26th, Abbey Gate became both the only workable entry and the highest risk choke point. Context and scale. Kabul fell on August 15th. By August 30th, more than 122,000 people had been evacuated by United States and coalition aircraft. At the peak, roughly 19,000 people departed in 24 hours on about 90 flights. That tempo translated into departures as often as one aircraft every 34 minutes. Security baseline. The suicide bombing at Abbey Gate on August 26th killed 13 United States service members and around 170 Afghan civilians. From that moment, perimeter screening slowed, standoff distance widened, and every handoff from gate to bus to aircraft required more minutes and more escorts. Who the protagonist is: a local civilian ground operations dispatcher embedded with coalition ramp control. He switches between Dari or Pashto and English. He sequences stands, stairs, buses, and fuel. He reconciles seat counts with loadmasters and updates manifests as families arrive split across vehicles. He listens on multiple radio nets while fielding perimeter updates that can invalidate an entire hour of planning. The rules and the tools. Radios are primary. Cellular service is unreliable under surge. When it fails, coordination collapses to whoever has line of sight or a working handset. The dispatcher lives by short cycles: confirm stand availability, tug to spot, stairs on, power on, board, close, push, tow clear, and reset the lane. With limited vehicles and ground support equipment, improvisation is routine. Troops even hot-wired abandoned cars to move around the airfield when official fleets fell short. Throughput metrics the dispatcher watches. Turn time on a tactical airlifter measured in tens of minutes, not hours. Pilots described 30 minutes to land and take off during the surge. A single C-17 famously lifted 823 people on one sortie. The initial count of 640 was corrected by Air Mobility Command after deboarding. These are outliers, but they show the ceiling of what the ramp tries to enable. System friction, the dispatcher cannot control. Intermediate hubs choke and force a pause in Kabul, even when aircraft and crews are ready. When Al Udeid and other staging bases hit capacity, gates in Kabul closed for hours or days, and buses idled. Every downstream constraint becomes a local crowd control problem at HKIA. Operating definition of success: seats filled to safe limits, wheels up on schedule with fuel to spare, no injuries on the stairs, no foreign object debris event on the taxiway, no bus stuck in a crowd at the wrong gate. The dispatcher's technology stack is simple: radios, whiteboards, paper manifests, and whatever ground equipment is not broken or reassigned. Heat and altitude drive everything. Kabul sits near 1,800 meters above sea level. August days push toward 33 degrees Celsius on bare concrete. Hydration is not a comfort task. It is the difference between a functional ramp and a string of heat casualties. Inside the wire there is stock on pallets, but distribution breaks under surge. Coolers at stairs, bus lanes, and the holding pad run dry by late morning. Shade is improvised with tails and hangers. Ice melts faster than resupply cycles. Outside the wire, people wait for hours with little shade and limited access to clean water. When the perimeter tightens, we redirect water to crowd cooling and lose drinking supply on the ramp. Quantities are blunt. A crate of 12 bottles at 1.5 liters is 18 liters. If 30 marshals, drivers, medics, and loaders each need at least 3 liters across a heat shift, that is 90 liters. That is 5 full crates before sundown, for one lane only, not counting buses, staged at a second stand, or a medical diversion that pulls an extra team. Miss that math, and you get dizziness, slow reaction times, and mistakes at stairs and on the taxi line. Cash is a tool, not an accounting line. Banks cap withdrawals around $200 per week per account. Electronic payments fail under network stress. Vendors demand cash on delivery. A simple run for water, ice, disposable cups, and salt snacks becomes a scavenger hunt across units and shifts. If the cash carrier cannot get through the city or the queue, the plan dies. Prices move while you work. Staple food and fuel jump by tens of % in days. A 50-kilogram sack of flour in early September is quoted around 2,200 Afghani in the city, up from prior weeks. Vendors pass transport and fuel shocks straight into the price of water near the airport. A box that was affordable yesterday becomes a budget call today. We switch to larger jerry cans for hand wash and save sealed bottles for drinking only. Quality control is a hidden task. Seals are checked. Caps with broken rings are rejected. Bulk water is kept for sanitation, not for drinking. Chlorine tabs are rationed. Any contamination event on the ramp triggers a pause that burns time we do not have. Every leader competes with operations. Dust control sprays, crew cooling, and medic use pull from the same supply. Ground power shortfalls keep aircraft air conditioning off during boarding, which pushes cabin temperatures up and increases the water draw at the stairs. A decision to cool a queue can drain what you needed for 2 turns later. At first light, I count inventory, not hopes. 4 coolers charged with ice, 12 crates on the ramp, 4 in the bus yard, 2 near the stairs. I assign 1 crate per active stand and hold 2 in reserve for medical. By 9, the aluminum is hot and the radios are busy. A runner calls, "The bank line killed the cash pickup." A vendor promises delivery if paid now in cash or later at a higher price. I reassign 1 cooler to the perimeter spray and accept that the second stand will run warm. By noon, 2 coolers are dry. I split a 2-liter bottle between 3 people and push the next bus anyway. At 1500, a medical diversion steals a crate. At 1700, a relief truck sits at a checkpoint without an escort for an hour. By sunset, the whiteboard shows a 2-crate deficit and 3 more flights inbound. You expect water on demand. Here you choose between leaving the radios to hunt for supply or holding the flow while your team's cognition degrades in heat and dehydration. Either choice has operational costs measured in minutes and risk, not convenience. Sleeping is opportunistic, not scheduled. People nap on terminal floors, on cargo pallets, in parked buses, or under aircraft tails. Noise never stops. Turbines spool, auxiliary power units hum, forklifts beep. Light pollution from ramp lamps and vehicle strobes kills deep sleep. Hearing protection reduces the roar, but also masks radio cues. So many keep one ear uncovered and pay for it later with headaches and ringing. Cooling is improvised. Shade comes from hangars, wing shadows, and canvas thrown over fencing. Air conditioning in lounges is unreliable. Brownouts and generator load shedding prioritize lights, radios, and perimeter towers over comfort. When a generator trips, fans die, and the heat stacks inside rooms fast. Onboard air conditioning often stays off until engines or ground power connect, so boarding happens in hot cabins that raise heart rates and water demand. Sanitation falls behind tempo. Showers are few and far. Lines stretch into working hours. Hand wash stations at bus pockets run dry by midday. Dust sits on every surface and rides the slipstream from propellers and jet blast, scratching eyes and throats. Crowded sleeping areas invite rashes and insect bites. Without steady laundry or fresh uniforms, salt and grit abrade skin and make harnesses and headsets uncomfortable enough to distract. Foreign object debris is a daily threat. Plastic wrap, cargo straps, tape, and empty bottles travel on the wind and hide in tire tracks. A single missed screw or strap can shred a tire or damage an engine. That is why pre-dawn FOD walks are non-negotiable, even after an 18-hour shift. Fire risk is real. Hot exhaust and carelessly discarded packaging can smolder. Fuel drips during quick turns demand absorbent pads and time. A small ramp fire ends in foam, inspections, and a closed stand that ripples delays across the schedule. Capacity and space are rationed. Every square meter used for sleeping is a square meter not used for staging pallets, buses, or a medical lane. When inbound flow surges, rest areas vanish under new traffic patterns. People wake to find their corner is now a fuel path and must move immediately, carrying gear they should have been sleeping with, not to lose it. Before sunrise, we run a FOD walk across 2 lanes and fill 3 bags with tape, straps, bottle caps, and cable ties. A floor fan in the rest area dies when the generator shifts load to perimeter lights. The room heats up and 3 people abandon sleep to seek air outside. Mid-morning, a fuel smell forces us to clear a patch of concrete and lay absorbent. 20 minutes of disruption, and 1 less quiet place to rest. After noon, heat inside a parked bus reaches levels that make it unusable as a bunk. We move sleepers to the shadow of a tail and wake 2 for a stair reposition. At dusk, a trash bin smolders near a tug shed. The foam truck handles it quickly, but the stand closes for checks, and we resequence an arrival to a farther spot, adding minutes to tow and bus runs. By night, the only dark corner left is a slice of concrete between a fence and a pallet stack. 2 short naps total, maybe 40 minutes. The radio fills the rest. There is no guaranteed rest. You do not have a quiet room, you have a radio and a patch of floor that disappears when operations demand it. Fatigue is not an inconvenience. It is the root of the next mistake on a live ramp. Shifts run long by design and longer in practice. 12 to 18 hours is normal. Rotations fail when relief cannot clear roadblocks or crowds. People stack tasks at the edge of exhaustion: ramp marshaling, bus dispatch, manifest checks, fuel coordination, and perimeter calls. Breaks are measured in minutes and often traded away for 1 more push. Throughput pressure never lets up. At peak tempo, parallel turns run on multiple stands. 1 late tug or a missing tow bar cascades across an hour. A flight that slips 10 minutes breaks the next handoff to buses and steals a refuel window from someone else. Every delay multiplies under crowd pressure at the gate and under slot limits in the air. Manifests fight reality. Names arrive with 3 spellings, families split across vehicles. Priority lists change mid-queue. Loadmasters need final head counts now. The dispatcher must give a number that fits seats, weight, and fuel, and live with the consequences if a late ad shows up at the stairs with documents in hand. Injuries are mundane and costly. Heat exhaustion, twisted ankles on chocks, bruises from rushing heavy stairs, pinched fingers on cargo straps. Each minor injury pulls a person off the line and adds minutes to simple moves. Fatigue makes people sloppy with cones and radios, which threatens the next aircraft, not just the current one. Pay and staffing are unstable. Contractors and local hires work cash-heavy, receipt-light shifts. Hazard pay promises may lag paperwork. When cash is short, a skilled driver leaves early to look after family needs in the city. You get a body on the seat of the tug, but not the same competence. Training compresses into one shouted brief and a hope they have seen a ramp before. Communication is a tax on attention. 3 radio nets chatter at once, one for ramp, one for perimeter movement, one for airlift command and retasking. The phone rings when radios are saturated. The whiteboard fills and empties. The mind tries to thread it all without dropping a call sign or a stand number. That is where errors breed. Before sunrise, I review the rotation board. 5 marshals on, 3 due to relieve at noon. By 10, 2 reliefs are stuck behind a checkpoint. The noon handoff dies. A tug goes down with a battery fault, so I reassign a driver to a spare that has no working headset. At 12:30, a manifest mismatch forces a recount at the stairs. The loadmaster holds the door open while I balance head count against fuel and weight. At 1400, a driver strains a knee on a hurried chalk pull. I move a marshal to driving and lose a set of eyes on the wingtip. At 1600, a perimeter call freezes bus movement for 20 minutes. The next arrival holds on the taxiway and burns fuel margin. At 1800, the relief team finally arrives, already dehydrated and good for maybe 4 hours. I erase and rewrite the board again. You expect a buffer, a clean handoff, and silent tools. Here you run hot for hours with no slack. Cognitive overload under 3 radios and cascading tasks turns simple arithmetic into risk. You will reach for your second brain, a calm room, a shared document, and find only a loud ramp and a whiteboard that never stays current. The medical load is constant and spiky. Heat, dehydration, crowd crush, slips on fuel film, cuts from fencing, and fainting at the stairs. Inside the perimeter, a triage tent handles airway, breathing, circulation, and cooling. Most cases are dehydration or heat exhaustion. A typical moderate case needs 1 to 2 liters of fluids and at least 20 minutes under shade before safe movement. Severe heat cases need active cooling and monitoring, which ties up a medic and a stretcher team for the next hour. Every medical diversion rewrites the plan. A single stretcher load at the stairs adds 5 to 10 minutes because you need tie-downs, a clear aisle, and a head count update. If the patient cannot fly, the slot you protected becomes dead time while you transfer back to the tent. If the patient must fly, the loadmaster wants a weight and a seat trade, and the bus flow pauses until the configuration is safe. One case can consume a stand for a full cycle. Infectious disease is the background beat. Thousands of people in heat and dust means coughs and diarrhea rise. Mask use drops under the afternoon sun. There is no practical isolation. COVID tests, when available, take longer than the queues will allow. Hand wash stations run dry by midday. Oral rehydration salts carry more impact per kilogram than almost anything else we stock, and they still run out. Women's health pulls hidden time. Late-term pregnancies present in the queue without records. A contraction at the gate becomes an immediate medical escort, a privacy problem in a cramped tent, and a decision about whether to hold a flight or divert the patient to a safer corner of the airfield. Finding a female clinician can take minutes you do not have. That delay ripples through buses, manifests, and fueling windows. Supplies do not scale cleanly. Oxygen bottles are finite. Cold chain for drugs is fragile when generators trip. Dressings, gloves, and saline look abundant at dawn and thin out by late afternoon. Restocking across a hot ramp costs 10 to 15 minutes per run and a person off the line. Every liter of water poured onto a fainting passenger is a liter not going to the crew step later. Before sunrise, the med tent logs 3 mild overnight cases and resets. At 9, 2 fainting incidents at the stairs trigger 10 minutes of cooling and a seat reshuffle. At 11, a bus unloads a boy with heat cramps. 2 medics, a stretcher, and 25 minutes later he is stable, but the bus lane backs up and the next aircraft boards late. At 14, a pregnant woman near the gate contracts. We pull her inside, screen quickly, and route her to a quieter corner with a female nurse. The loadmaster asks for final numbers. I subtract 2 seats, add 1 escort, and push the manifest update. At 16, oxygen runs low after a string of dizzy evacuees. A runner spends 15 minutes crossing the ramp for new bottles while a pilot warns his hold is burning fuel. At 19, the tent closes a small wound and hands the passenger water and salt. They can fly. We catch up by 2 minutes and lose 5 elsewhere. You cannot prioritize everyone. You will decide who flies now and who waits again and again in minutes and under heat, knowing each choice trades medical safety for operational tempo. Most people can make that choice once. Here, you make it every hour. The perimeter is layered and unstable. Outside the wire, Taliban checkpoints shape who reaches the gates and when. Inside, coalition forces control entry at named gates. Responsibility shifts by the day and sometimes by the hour. A closure at one gate pushes thousands toward another, turning flow management into risk management. After August 26th, security posture tightens everywhere and movement windows shrink. Threat streams dictate tempo. The Abbey Gate bombing on August 26th kills 13 United States service members and around 170 Afghan civilians. From that point, standoff distances increase, screening slows, and every handoff from gate to bus requires more escorts and more minutes. Indirect fire alerts and reports of person-borne explosive threats trigger immediate stop movement calls that freeze stairs and buses in place. Each freeze burns runway slots and fuel margin and magnifies crowd pressure outside. Crowd control has operational costs. Warning shots, loud hailers, barriers, and razor wire change the geometry at the gate. A 10-meter shift in a barrier line can halve a lane's throughput. Any sudden push from the crowd risks a crush. Escorting a single vulnerable group through a hostile mix of people absorbs vehicles and soldiers you needed for the next aircraft. Documentation is both law and friction. Lists update fast. Paper at the gate lags reality. Many evacuees arrive with partial documents or names spelled 3 ways. Counterfeit papers and informal letters appear. Gate teams insist on stricter checks after the blast, which protects lives but cuts the rate of entry. The dispatcher downstream must reconcile seat counts against the smaller, slower trickle of cleared passengers. Criminal and opportunistic behavior adds noise. Pickpockets and extortion appear in the lines. Some evacuees are forced to turn back at outer checkpoints. Others are shaken down for cash or phones. Rumors of a secret opening create surges at the wrong place. Each rumor the dispatcher cannot kill becomes a bus lane that never fills to plan. Communication rules the ramp. A single radio call, gate cold, gate hot, freeze buses, switch to east, switch back to Abbey, rewrites the next hour. Escorts that were promised vanish to a new threat. A bus convoy held outside the wrong gate becomes a heat and safety problem rather than a boarding solution. The safer you try to make the perimeter, the more coordination you must pay for on the ramp. At first light, perimeter reports say, Abbey is open with limited intake. I shape the morning around that trickle. At 9, an alert halts movement. Buses stop 50 meters short of the gate, and crews stand by in the sun. 15 minutes later, movement resumes with stricter screening, and the flow drops by half. By 11, East Gate is declared closed. I cancel a 2-bus run and reassign escorts to Abbey, which is now the only workable path. At 13, a family arrives with mismatched spellings. Screening takes longer, and a loadmaster asks why his seats are still empty. At 15, a rumor says North Gate reopened. 2 buses drift that way until radio confirms it is false, and we lose 30 minutes pulling them back. At 17, a sudden crowd push forces a temporary gate reset. We cool people with hoses while the barrier line is rebuilt. By dusk, a curfew warning upstream empties the approach roads, and my last aircraft departs with 5 open seats that no one can safely fill. Life runs on unpredictability where the price is not inconvenience, but existence. You expect fair rules and clean inputs. Here, law is whatever can be enforced safely in the next 5 minutes, and your perfect plan collapses under one radio call you cannot control. Heat plus dust is the baseline hazard. August sun on concrete pushes surface temperatures well above the air reading. Prop wash and jet blast lift, fine dust into eyes and lungs. Visibility drops on low wind mornings, then surges of wind create moving curtains of grit. People cough more, blink more, and miss small cues, hand signals, cone positions, a chalk left in a bad place. Sanitation cannot keep pace with flow. Portable toilets near bus pockets overflow by midday. Hand wash tanks run dry. Gray water and spilled fuel make slick patches that turn routine footwork into a fall risk. Trash piles faster than collection. Plastic wrap and tape migrate across the ramp and become foreign object debris. Fuel and fluids reshape the map. Quick turns leak a little. Fuel sheens, hydraulic mist, galley water. Each spill needs absorbent, cones, and time. A 5-meter exclusion zone steals the exact real estate where a bus or stairs would park. Multiply that by 3 stands and you lose minutes on every sequence. Night is cooler, but not safer. After sunset, fatigue rises while lighting creates glare and blind corners. Temporary floodlights throw hard shadows that hide straps and debris. Insects swarm any lit workstation, then ride into cabs and cockpits. Radios sound clearer in the cool, but coordination slows as crews tire. Wind and microclimate matter. A gusty afternoon can push a light stair truck off alignment by a few centimeters at the top step. That is enough to pause boarding and re-chock. Tailwind on a parked aircraft carries exhaust toward the queue. Carbon monoxide headaches appear an hour later. Even small shifts in wind direction change where dust settles and where you can safely stage food and medical supplies. At 8, we hang 2 extra trash bags on a fence. By 10, they are full, and the ground around them is littered with tape and shrink wrap. At 11, a small fuel drip near a wheel well forces a local cordon. Stairs must move 1 meter back, which lengthens every passenger step and slows boarding. At 13, Jet blast from a taxiing aircraft lofts dust across the bus lane. 3 people stumble on the ramp's slick patch where gray water met dust. At 16, a wind shift drives hot exhaust into a waiting line. 2 evacuees report headaches, and we reposition the queue 20 meters. After dark, glare off a wet patch hides a cargo strap. A marshal spots it at the last second, and we halt the tow for a 2-minute pickup that saves a tire. Wear on eyes, skin, and breathing turns into mistakes. You expect clean air and dry footing. Here you work in grit and glare, and the environment quietly taxes every decision you make. Cash is king and capped. Banks reopen with strict limits, about $200 per week per account, long lines, and empty ATMs. Wire transfers stall. Card terminals are useless. Vendors will deliver only for cash on delivery. That turns routine buys, water, ice, diesel, gloves, batteries, into missions that depend on a runner, an escort, and luck. Prices move faster than plans. Vegetables and fruit jump by tens of % in a few days. Cooking oil and wheat flour ratchet upward, week over week. Fuel is the worst. City gasoline and diesel spike, then dip, then spike again as supply convoys wobble. Every jump passes straight into what a case of water costs at the perimeter and what a generator hour really means for the budget. Exchange rate whiplash punishes hesitation. Dollars buy more one morning and less by evening. A vendor who quoted an Afghani at 9 becomes a dollar-only seller at noon. The same order costs 10 to 20% more by the time your runner returns from a blocked checkpoint. Any delay becomes a tax. Fuel availability shapes the day. Jet fuel for aircraft is fenced by coalition procedures, but ground fuel for buses, generators, and tugs rides the city's fragile supply. A missed tanker window idles stairs and darkens a restroom. Rationing appears. Fewer bus cycles, shorter fan hours, tighter towing plans to save diesel. Each cut buys time now and risk later. Paper budgets do not move pallets. Per diem and hazard pay promises do not hydrate a crew. Receipts are nice when printers work. They do not convince a vendor who wants cash now. You end up with a paper ledger, a pouch of mixed currency, and a growing list of IOUs between units that will take weeks to reconcile after the airfield is already quiet. At 7, the cash pouch holds 180 United States dollars and a stack of small Afghani notes. By 8, the runner stands in a bank line that does not move. At 10, a vendor calls. He can deliver 40 cases of water and 2 blocks of ice if paid in cash within 30 minutes. I split the last dollars and send a second runner with an escort. The vendor arrives with 30 cases instead and a higher price. At 12, the diesel drop for tugs slips behind a city road closure. We cut 1 bus loop per hour to conserve fuel. At 15, the exchange rate shifts. The afternoon quote for gloves and batteries is 15% higher. At 17, a promised cash top-up fails when the courier turns back at a checkpoint. I drop ice from the list, buy oral rehydration salts instead, and accept warm water with better medical yield. By night, we have 5 cases left, 1 generator hour in reserve, and a ledger full of numbers that do not buy anything. Money runs out even when, on paper, the budget exists. You expect a card, a receipt, and a restock. Here you choose between fuel for movement and water for cognition, with no electronic fallback and no guarantee the price will be the same by the time you decide. Low profile is policy. Staff choose neutral clothing, cover logos, hide badges under shirts, and avoid bright colors. Phones stay in pockets near the perimeter. Pointing a camera at crowds or checkpoints invites conflict. Tattoos, flashy gear, and loud behavior draw attention you do not want. Moving between zones means changing posture. Head down near the gate, assertive on the ramp, deferential with escorts you do not control. Gender shapes movement. Women and girls have a harder time reaching gates and clearing searches. Inside, you need female screeners and clinicians for modesty and privacy. When they are not available, everything slows. Families arrive split, men held at one checkpoint, women and children at another. Manifests do not reflect this split, and reconciliation takes minutes you cannot spare. Names and language are friction. Dari and Pashto names appear in multiple transliterations. The same person can present 3 spellings across documents. Gate teams must reconcile identity on the spot under pressure. Mispronouncing a name or mishandling a document escalates tension in seconds. The dispatcher downstream inherits the delay as empty seats against a hard schedule. Rules of speech and media are not optional. Journalists and protesters face detention risks outside the wire. Inside, any filming near evacuees or soldiers can ignite arguments. Rumors travel faster than radios. A secret opening, a special list. Foreigners get priority. Each rumor the dispatcher cannot kill reshapes bus flows and invites resentment at the stairs. Status and visibility matter. Diplomats, passport holders, and flagged cases move through faster lanes. Pulling a vulnerable group through a crowded approach requires tact and mass. Do it clumsily, and the crowd turns. Do it too quietly, and the group misses the window. Escort availability becomes the gatekeeper of fairness. At dawn, I brief the team, neutral clothes, badges tucked, no phones out near the perimeter. At 9, a bus carries a mixed family. The women need a female screener who is tied up at another lane. We hold them in shade for 10 minutes and resequence 2 seats. At 11, a document shows one name in 2 versions. The gate hunts a second reference while my loadmaster asks for final numbers. At 13, a bystander raises a phone to film a heated exchange. An escort steps in, and I reroute the bus away from the crowd that gathers. At 15, a rumor says a separate VIP door is open. 40 people drift that way and stall a lane. We recover them with 2 soldiers and 15 minutes of persuasion. At 18, a pregnant evacuee needs a female medic. We find one after a short search, and the manifest loses another 2 seats to escorts. By night, the team's voices are hoarse from saying the same calm rules every 5 minutes. You will be asked to enforce rules that clash with your sense of fairness, then reverse or bend them a minute later to keep people safe. You must do it quickly, in public, under stress, without inflaming the crowd. Most people can do that once. Here, you do it all day. Why you would not last a day, and what we underestimate. First, decision density under lethal uncertainty. You work with partial information and shrinking windows. A single radio call can flip the hour. A gate closes, an escort is pulled, a stretcher appears at the stairs, a downstream hub hits capacity. You cannot wait for confirmation. You choose now between fueling or boarding, between holding a bus for a family split at the checkpoint or filling the last seats with whoever is cleared. Every choice is a trade of minutes and risk, and there is no second attempt when the slot is gone. Errors are not missed calendar invites. They are lives, fuel margins, and airspace you do not get back. Second, physiological exhaustion that strips judgment. Heat near 33 degrees Celsius at roughly 1,800 meters, dust in the lungs, noise that never stops, and sleep measured in short naps on concrete. Dehydration blunts cognition. Eyes burn, hands slip, radios blur into a wall of sound. By the 8th hour, your attention narrows, your short-term memory drops, and small mistakes appear at the worst places. A chalk left too close to a tire, a misheard stand number, A missed cue on a moving stair. The body fails first, and the mind follows. Third, friction between systems that multiplies under pressure. Cash withdrawal caps turn resupply into scavenger hunts. Prices swing during the same shift. Ground support equipment is finite and mismatched to aircraft types. A missing tow bar, a dead tug battery, or an empty cooler is not a nuisance. It ripples into boarding delays, refuel conflicts, and manifest changes. Downstream bottlenecks at staging bases push crowd pressure back onto your perimeter, forcing stops that waste runways and burn fuel. Every fix moves the bottleneck and buys only a few more minutes. What we underestimate today is the invisible logistics of queues: water, shade, bus sequencing, radios that actually work, a whiteboard that stays truthful for 10 minutes, an escort at the right fence line. These mundane enablers decide outcomes as surely as aircraft and policy. 2 crates of water placed at the stairs prevent 3 heat cases that would have frozen a lane for 20 minutes. 1 correctly staged bus prevents a drift toward the wrong gate that would have cost an hour and a confrontation. A charged tug battery preserves a tow window that keeps 2 flights on time. Success is built from these small, unglamorous choices, repeated all day under pressure. That is why you would not last a day in this chair. Not for lack of courage, but because courage does not create minutes, water, or certainty. The job is arithmetic under heat, triage under noise, and constant rebalancing of cues you do not fully control. If you see the operation clearly now, you also see that its quiet details, not its headlines, held the corridor open long enough for people to leave.